Does everyone have Tableau open? Give me a thumbs up if you guys do. You guys got all the data sets downloaded just fine. All right, cool. So you guys should be on this page. Is that right? It was in that link that we sent you. There's 2 data sets in there. We'll be using one today, but just make sure to download both just in case we do something else with that data set later on. I'll give you guys a couple minutes to download it if you haven't already. All right, cool. So from here, this is the first place that you'll get to once you do open Tableau every time. And then, so the first order of business is to read in your data. So you can see on this left side connect pane, there's a couple different options that you have. You can read from a Microsoft Excel file, a JSON file, and even a text file. But for the data set that I gave you guys, it was a CSV. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down to more under to a file. And click on that. And then what you want to do is you want to locate your data set. So the data set that we'll be using is the COVID-19_cases data set. So just click on it and then click open. And it should populate like that. Did anyone else get anything different, or is that where you guys got at? Good. All right, cool. So it is a little bit overwhelming in terms of like what's going on over here. But just to kind of give you guys an overview. I mean, on the left side, I have files. I've used this before, but for you guys, it should be relatively empty. And then on the bottom here, what you do get is you get these 2 different panes popping up. This one you can kind of just put to the side by clicking this left arrow, because what's more important is this tabular data right here is kind of like what you would see if you do open this data in like an Excel spreadsheet or Google Sheets. And this is just to kind of check that, you know, you do have the right columns and that your data was read in correctly. And I think should be fine. I tried this a few times, but let me know if you guys have anything else. All right, cool. So I think everyone's got it in correctly. So the first order of business is that we actually want to explore our data and make sure that we understand fully what we're analyzing, what we're visualizing before we do any sort of analysis. So what we want to do first is go to sheet 1 here at the bottom. It's just like Excel with the different sheets. You know, there's one Excel file and you have a bunch of different sheets within Excel. This is kind of a similar thing going on over here. So what we want to do first is we have our data on the left side. So these are the different columns that were read in. These certain columns were just put on this left side over here. That way it's easily accessible when you are creating your visualization. And you can kind of see that there's 2 different distinctions between your columns. The top over here with the ABC icon and date. These are all qualitative variables, so anything categorical, anything that has to do with characters or anything non-numerical essentially. So that'll be up here and it'll be kind of highlighted in blue. And then everything that is quantitative, anything that you can add, subtract, do any operations to is down here with the hashtag symbol. And then this is your numbers and essentially everything that you're going to be filling in for your visualizations. So what we want to do first to explore our data is drag our this date bubble right here into columns. So that way the date kind of populates vertically. And for this workshop, we're going to be looking at time series data. That's why we want to look at years first. And we can kind of see that, you know, there are 2 years that populate, but we know that with the data that we have, if we go back to our data source, we can see that it gives us specific dates as well as this specific months and days, which means that we can break this data down even further. So in order to get that monthly breakdown, what we're going to do is we're going to hover over this bubble right here that we drag to columns. And there's this little downwards arrow that pops up. So we're going to click on that. And then what we want to do is we want to select month, but we want to select the second month rather than this first one. So this first section right here is all continuous data, meaning that it will stay as a categorical variable. But if we change it to, it's discrete data, which means it's categorical. But if we change it to this bottom one right here, it becomes continuous, meaning that it has a continuous months that those certain rows have. So in order to populate this data set with our numbers, what we're going to do is we're going to drag cases, since we want to look at COVID cases over time. We're going to drag that to rows. And what it should do is it should just make a line graph automatically. Does everyone have that? All right, cool. So what we're going to do here is we can see that there was 22 million currently, 2.2 million COVID cases just in December, which doesn't seem right. So what we want to do to investigate that is we want to drag our area to color. Actually, before we do that, just go back to your data source. We can see that under area, it's actually the counties. So instead of calling it area, we want to rename this. So just double click on the name. We're going to rename this. That way we can easily know what we're working with once we do go to our different worksheets and stuff like that. So we want to go back to sheet 1. And then what we want to do is we want to drag county to color right here. So just hover over it and let go of your left click. And you can see that it breaks down the line graph by the different counties that are here. What we can see with this is that, if we look at the one that seemingly has the most COVID cases, we can see that this data set does have a running cumulative sum for California, meaning that all the counties added up, they just store it under the California county selection, I guess. So meaning that all these counties right here added up equal that California total. So in order to, so what we want to do is we want to get rid of that, since anything that we do with our cases will be doubled since we have that California selection in there. So in order to get rid of that, what we want to do is we want to drag our county again, but this time we want to drag it to filters. There we go. And then from there, this dialog box should pop up, and you can see that California is selected. So in order to get rid of that, what you want to do is just deselect California. And what you can do is you can kind of drag the dialog box to the side, and you can click apply. So that way you can kind of see that change happen. So now we have more accurate data, it seems like. And click OK to get rid of that dialog box. So now what we can see is that Los Angeles County has the most number of COVID cases, it seems like, per month. And what we can do is we can kind of take a step back and do some sort of sanity check, just to make sure that what we have is relatively accurate. So we kind of know, kind of off the top of your head, that Los Angeles does have the most population of any county in California, and we can kind of predict that it would have the most amount of COVID cases for the month. So now that we have that, it kind of makes sense now. Is everyone okay? Does anyone have any questions? All right, cool. So now that we've kind of done some data exploration and some relative data cleaning, what we can do is now start working on our visualizations. So to do that, we are going to drag county out of color. And in order to get rid of anything from the side right here, you can just take it and you can just drag it back here and let go and get rid of that. So what we want to do now is we want to do a comparison of COVID cases over the month with the cumulative deaths, since that's what's one of the quantitative variables that we have for the data set. So what we want to do with that now is that we want to drag cumulative deaths right next to cases under the rows. That way it should populate onto the graph just the same way that the cases did. So once we let go of that, you can see that it actually creates another graph that is stacked vertically on underneath the cases one, and doesn't look as clean as like maybe having them on the same graph. So in order to put them on the same graph, what you want to do is you want to hover over the cumulative deaths y-axis, and you want to right click. Then once you do that, you just want to select dual axis, and then now they should be on the same graph. So now what that does is that the y-axis on the left side is the number of cases and kind of counting the cases, and then the y-axis on the right side is cumulative deaths. So that way you can kind of compare given the line that you have. So you may notice that there's a big drop here in October 2021. Does anyone have any guesses on why? Okay, cool. Yeah, exactly. So the data isn't complete yet since we have all the data for all the days in the month. Yeah. Come get extra done. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, so the month is not complete, so that way we don't have complete data. And that can kind of throw off any visualizations or calculations that we do later on, or even with this one in our worksheet. So what we want to do to get rid of that and just have the dates up till September 30th, so the last full month, is what we want to do is we want to take the date bubble from the left side and then drag it to filters. And then this dialog box should pop up with a bunch of options. But since we want to select the maximum date, so up to what certain date we want to see the data, I just click maximum and then click next. And then what should pop up is this little slider right here. So it has our start date, which we want to keep, and our end date, we want to make September 30th. So what we're going to do is you can just click over here and then just navigate to September 30th. And you can click apply, and then that should just change it. So it looks a little bit more reasonable now, and it has all the complete months that we have so far with the data set. So you can just click OK to get rid of the dialog box. And then we want to, so it's nice to have two line graphs, but we want to make one into a bar graph. So that way it's a little bit cleaner and a little bit easier to read. So that way you kind of don't get mixed up while you're looking at the lines over time. So what we want to do for that is we want to make cases into a bar chart instead of a line. So what you want to do with that is you just hover your mouse over anywhere on the cases line, so the blue line, or it should be blue for you guys. And then what you want to do is you want to right click, and then this dialog box should pop up, and then hover over mark type, and then just select bar. So that way now you'll have the cases as a bar graph with the cumulative deaths as staying as a line. So that makes it a little easier to track and helps you see the volume a little bit more with the cases. So yeah. Oh, like just, what do you mean? Like right now, bar graph is like this one? Oh, so you just want to make it into one. Okay, one axis. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure how to do that, but the reason why they do dual axis is sometimes, there's different data. Yeah, so if like, let's say if it was to be one axis, the max for cumulative deaths would be 2 million. And then the max for cases would be 1.2. That way it's almost double the height if we did have it on the same axis. Yeah. If you right click on the axis and hit synchronized, it doesn't? Okay, got it. Mm-hmm. So I guess you can do that. See, I'm learning too with you guys. But for the time being, we'll unsynchronize the axis because we're going to do some changing regarding the values that we're going to have. And then maybe we can get back to that since I do think they do end up being around the same value. So once we get to here, we can kind of take a step back again and look at our values just to make sure that they are accurate. So what we're seeing here is that the cumulative deaths seems to be 2 million, which is way too much. Since the amount of COVID cases seem to be about 2 million itself. So that is just because the deaths that we have, the cumulative deaths, it adds up based on. So since the cumulative deaths change every day, we're going to have to break down our x-axis into the days instead of having it as months. So in order to do that, what we want to do, see it, but we have the x-axis right here. And then essentially what you want to do to just break it down into like more granular data is you just want to click this plus that's right here on the x-axis. So once you click that, it breaks it down into the weeks. And then if you click it again, it breaks it down into the months. Into the days, sorry. So that way, the cumulative deaths now is accurate at about 68,000. And then, you can't specifically see the bars, but you can kind of see the trends as it goes in terms of days. So now what we can do from here is we can kind of play around with a bunch of different options since we have all the data that we want and it's all accurate. So one thing that we can do is that we can create this, or we can make this line right here into an area chart or area graph, I think. So what we want to do here is we want to click on sum of cumulative deaths under the marks tab. And you should just see the same options as you did under all. And you know this is a line graph because it has this little squiggly line right here. And what we want to do with this is we want, instead of automatic, it automatically is making it into a line. What we want to do is we want to make this into an area chart. So that way it kind of populates and it gives you a better idea that it is a cumulative sum instead of just like a point in time. And then we can kind of see that the bar chart has kind of been pushed to the back here. So what we want to do is we want to bring that to the front so it's a lot easier to tell, since we do know that the area is just filling in everything underneath that line. So in order to do that, it's a pretty quick fix. What you want to do here is you want to take the bubble for sum of cumulative deaths and just kind of put that on the other side here. So that way we can kind of see the bar chart in front now with the cumulative deaths in the back. Does anyone have any questions at this point? So just like with Excel, I'm sure your professors have told you in Excel, renaming your worksheets is smart. So for this one, we're just going to rename this to cases deaths. So I think we're about good with this worksheet right here. So next we'll be going into heat maps, since we do have some geographical data. So what you're going to want to do here is right next to your cases and deaths worksheet, there should be a little thing right here that has a plus on it. It's kind of hard to tell the distinction between the few, but click the leftmost one. That should open the new worksheet. So what we want to do here is we want to create a heat map of the COVID cases. And since we have the county data, we expect to have this populated by the county. So to start off, what we need to do first is actually change our data type for county into a geographical data type. And if you go back to your data source tab, you can see that it's currently read in as character data, meaning that, it's just like any other word or category. But in order to change this to geographic, what you want to do is you want to click on this ABC you see in the top left corner on the data source tab, click on it. And then for geographic role, you just want to select county. And once you do that, you should see like a globe icon now at the top left instead of letters. It's kind of signifying that you have changed it to a geographic data type. So now with that, yeah, for sure. So you should see ABC here at the top corner. You just click on it and then hover over geographic role and then select county. It doesn't show up. Does anyone else have any other questions so far? Anything cool you found out? Because like I'm always learning new things about Tableau. So if there's anything that you guys were playing around with that was cool, you guys can let us know. Good. All right, cool. So what we can do now is we can go back to our sheet 2, which is where we're going to put our map. And from here, we will just drag county just into this blank area right here. And this is another way to kind of populate your worksheet or your visualization as well. So we just drag it here and we drop it, and it should come up with a map of California, yeah. And then the dots are just kind of the different counties that we have read in from our data source. So after we do that, we just want to take our cases, since we want to look at COVID cases in the counties, and we will drag it onto the data. We'll just drag it on top of California as well. And you can see that it kind of populates with some dots. But since we want a heat map, we want the counties filled instead of dots. So what we can do in order to get to that place is to click show me in the top right. And once you do that, there should be a world with dots, and then there should be a world that's kind of filled in. So just click that, and it should just populate with the heat map. So what we can do from here is that we can see that there are some counties that are still gray, meaning that the data wasn't read in properly. So in order to change that, what we can do is we can, on your visualization here, it should say 12 unknown or some sort of unknown in the bottom right. So what you want to do for that is you just want to click on that, and then dialog box should pop up, and then you can hit edit locations. And once you do that, you can see that there are a few counties that weren't able to be read in, since it was looking at the whole U.S. and there might be some of the similar counties in different states. So what we can do to solve that is we can just specify. So you click on state province up here, and you click on that, and then what we want to do is we want to specify it to be California. So we click on fixed, and what you can do is you go down to California, and then that way we can see that it has read in all the counties for California, except for a few of our variables that was California out of state. But if we press OK, we can see that all the counties are filled in now since it's been detected properly. And one thing I forgot to mention is that you saw that California pop up again, right, on the edit locations. So one thing that we can do to keep that California filter that we did earlier is we can go back to our cases and deaths worksheet. And what we want to do in order to have that apply to all the worksheets that we create is we can hover over the county filter under filter. Hover over the county bubble under filters, and then click that downward facing arrow. And what we want to do is hover over apply to worksheets, and then all using this data source. So that way, once we do come here, you can see that filter is applied here as well. So meaning that California is not there anymore. And if we click on this to unknown now, and we click edit locations, we can just see that California has been removed from here. So now that we have that, what we want to do is we kind of want to change the color scale. Some things that you learn while doing some visualizations, that some colors kind of evoke certain emotions and also give like certain knowledge to the data, I guess. So what we want to do is we want to click here on color, and we want to kind of change this from blue to red, since COVID cases aren't a good thing. We probably want like warmer, more negative color. So you just click on color right here, and you can click edit colors. So right now it's blue, and Tableau has a bunch of different options. But for this, I think red will be a good option. So you can kind of drag this dialog box here and click apply to preview your data before you make changes. And yeah, I think that looks pretty good. All right. So once we've done that, we want to add some county names to the map, because like not everyone's a geographic whiz. We don't really know where some counties are. So in order to do that, we will take county from our tables pane on the left side, and we're going to drag this bubble here to label. Kind of self-explanatory. And yeah, it won't populate all the counties because there's way too many counties and will kind of overlap. But it'll give you like key locations, so that way you can kind of see and kind of know where that area is. And then, so now when you hover over the county, it tells you the county name as well as cases. But I think one thing, good thing to add on there, just for like information's sake, is to add the number of deaths from that county onto the box that pops up when you hover over it. So in order to do that, what you can do is you can take the deaths variable and just drag it onto a tooltip right here. So that thing that pops up when you're hovering over a certain area of your chart, it's called a tooltip. So now that way, when we hover over this, you can see that it has the county, cases, and then as well as the deaths. Okay, cool. Now what we want to do is we want to create a dashboard, since we've already got two visualizations. And I'm sure you guys might have heard the word dashboard being thrown around. And essentially what a dashboard is a kind of a compilation of some visualizations that you've made before. So in order to create a dashboard, what you want to do is you want to click the second square with a plus icon, kind of one over from the sheet name. Actually, before we do that, I want to rename this to heat map. So what you want to do here is you want to click this thing. If you hover over it, it said new dashboard, like that, and they should pop up. I'll take a break right here. Does anyone have any questions? All right, cool. So once we get this dashboard screen popped up, we can see that we have our two sheets right here that we created earlier. So that way we can easily just drag and drop them onto our dashboard. So what we're going to do first is we're going to drag our cases and deaths worksheet onto here. And we can see that it populates here with the legend that was on there as well. And then in order to fit the geo map or the heat map on here as well, what we want to do is just drag this, and then you want to keep holding it until you see this little gray box down here. That's kind of like a preview on where it'll end up once you do release your mouse click. Once we do that, we can see that the map is put here. It looks a little bit cramped, but we'll figure that out later. And yeah, you can kind of see that the map and the chart were able to fit on here pretty well. But then there's this like left column right here that's been taken up since there are those keys and legends that we had from our worksheet. So in order to solve that, well, what we can do is we can actually make these keys and legends that are floating and get rid of this right column all on its own. So what you want to do is you want to click on this cases one. So this one's for the geomap. And then once you click on this little downwards arrow should pop up. Once you click on that, you can go down to floating, and it should just kind of pop it out. And then from here, you can kind of drag it into this white space, since there's a decent amount of white space here. And then one tip, if you're kind of like navigating around the map, you might have noticed that you can't really drag the map to kind of move where you want it to go. What you can do is you can just press F, and then that kind of helps you move it around. So now what we want to do here is we want to get rid of these measure names, or at least move it to this white space over here, because one important thing for visualizations is you want to minimize the amount of white space without making it like over cramped or overcrowded. So we can do the same thing here. You just click on this key or legend and click this down arrow for more options. And then we want to create this floating as well. What we can do here is we can just drag this over and put it in this like white space. Right here. So it looks a little bit cleaner. But you can see that this column is still here, and that's because there is a container. So when you're populating a dashboard, every time you drag a visualization or a key onto the dashboard, it creates a container. So that way, nothing else can overlap it. So what we want to do, since we have an empty container now, is we can just press this X right here, and it should kind of move everything to the right. So another cool thing that we can do is we can make the heat map into a filter for this top graph. So essentially what we're going to do is, like, if you click on a certain county, it will filter this by that certain county, so you can kind of see this COVID statistics for that certain region. So in order to do that, you just click on the heat map panel, I guess, here at the bottom, and then just click use as filter, this little filter icon. And once you do that, it should create a filter for this and any other worksheets that you put on here. So let's say we want to look at slow COVID cases and cumulative deaths. We just click on that, and it should adjust the graph accordingly. So yeah, it's just a cool little thing that you can do with worksheets. And yeah, like I mentioned, if you put anything else onto this worksheet, clicking on slow would filter that worksheet by just the same as this region. So in order to get rid of this, you can just click on it again, or just click anywhere where there's white space, and we'll revert back to what it was before. All right. So we've got this down, and I think it would just be good to have like the running total of COVID cases and COVID deaths at the top. So that way it looks a little bit cleaner, and you can kind of check your results for your graph as well. So in order to do that, is we're going to just create a couple more worksheets here. We're going to create another worksheet by pressing down over here. And then what we want to do is we just want the number of COVID cases. So all right. I forgot how to get the title, but we can figure that out later. So if we're dragging sum of cases into the thing, here, I'll do it again. You just drag it into the panel here, and you can see the total number of cases. We'll just rename this to cases. That way we can track our data. And then we want to create another worksheet just for deaths. So click create a new worksheet, and then do the same thing with deaths. Just drag it over here. So now that we've created these two, we can go back to our original dashboard. And sorry, I'll rename this to deaths. That way we can track it. Sorry, I'm going a little bit faster. Everyone okay? Yeah. Huh? Yeah. For both of these? Okay, cool. So what I did over here is I just took cases and just dragged it into the blank area here in the middle. So that way it populates with the COVID cases for California up till now. And then same thing for deaths. Just drag deaths to the panel over here. Yeah. So once you do that, you can go back to our dashboard that we created here. And we want to have cases and deaths up here at the top corner. So in order to do that, like we did before, we want to drag cases, and we want it to populate just the top half of our chart right now. So if we let go, it should populate with cases. And because this is floating, this will change. So we'll just drag this down. So that'll be out of our way for now. And then with deaths, we can do the same, but we want to have it on the opposite side. So we just drag it to the right side over here and let go, and it should populate with deaths. We can fix the formatting later. So yeah, so then for this, what we can do is, in order to create space for this graph, since it is a little bit cramped and a little squished, we can just drag this line here a little bit up. So that way it creates a little bit more room. And in order to fix this formatting, what we want to do is, so I was just kind of playing around with this last night. Formatting takes some time in terms of like fixing and stuff. There's a bunch of different options. So I'll kind of go through a few right now. So one option is to click on this container right here, and then that arrow that we've been going to for a decent amount, we will click it again, and then now we want to fit this to the entire view. So this kind of moves the cases to the right side. And then what we want to do for deaths is, you can see that the number's been cut off a little bit. In order to fix that, we can just do the same thing by clicking down arrow, fit entire view, and we can see that deaths, the number did come up, and deaths is now on just one line. So in order to fix the title, what we can do is we can right click on the title, and from here we can click edit title. So you can see that it's aligned on the left hand side. So in order to change alignment, it's just like Word or any other word processing software. It's just click center, click apply, and it should bring it to the middle. And you click OK, and we can do the same for deaths as well. Right click on death, or right click on the title, click edit title, and then just align this in the middle. And then in order to change these values, what we want to do is it's a little bit different. What we want to do is we want to right click on the values and then click format. And it should pop up a format font panel on the left side. So what we want to do is we want to format the values. So instead of field here on the right, we just click some cases. And then this should pop up right here, and we want to change the alignment. So for that, we just click on automatic and change it from automatic to centered. So that way it should be in the middle. And then we can just kind of do the same thing. This pane should still be up. You just click on this right here. Actually, we'll just exit out of here. And we're just going to go back to the death number and do the same thing. Right click on that, click on format. And then we want to change this from fields to some death. And then change the alignment. Now that we've done that, you can just kind of play around with it. Make this a little bit smaller up here, giving this more room. and then dragging this thing back up here. So that way it creates, it's not overlapping with any of our visualization. And then just to zoom out a little bit on the heat map. And yeah, that was pretty much our Tableau workshop. Hopefully you guys learned a little bit. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask us after the meeting. Or if you have any questions going through it later, you can DM us on Instagram. So yeah, thank you guys.